Since Sonic Mania is shaping up to be the Sonic 4 that we needed like 8 years ago when this poor imitation came out, I figured now will be as good a time as ever to talk about the classics. I'm not as well versed in classic Sonic as many others on YouTube may be because, I grew up during Sonic's awkward teenage years and, the edginess, the bad lip syncing.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
The long werehog weeness. It was great, it was really great. But I did discover the classics through the power of emulation back when I was in middle school, as well as through buying the Sonic Gems and Mega Collections on the GameCube from GameStop bargain bin back in the day. So I do have some nostalgia with these games. That being said though, I'm not as nostalgic for them as many of you might be, and that's okay. But just keep in mind, I'm not trying to insult any of these games that you grew up with. I'm just sharing my opinions. Good? Good. Let's get started. Starting off with the lowest of the original games for me, it's actually the original. Would you look at that? Now before you roast the fuck out of me in the comments like I know you want to, just hear me out. Just please hear me out. The original Sonic, that shit's a classic. I mean, this was the game that started the franchise and put Sega on a map. Of course it's on some like legendary type shit. The speedy platforming action, the thrills, the attitude. Who can forget that damn foot tap? It's all amazing stuff. But this game suffers from the serious case of first game-itis. And as a result, it hasn't aged as gracefully as the other games. The devs were still figuring things out and gameplay wasn't as defined yet, leading to some major problems. More so than any other classics, this one is most hindered by the 4:3 aspect ratio, leading to the player running into many enemies and obstacles that are nearly impossible to react to. I know this particular problem was fixed in the Taxman version, but it's a mobile only game at the time, this video, so I'm honestly not going to really touch on that. There are definitely some cheap deaths to be had in this game, a bunch of them. Just if you play it, you'll understand what I mean. Then the zones. Two of them in particular I can't stand, being Marble and Labyrinth zones. Both of these levels are honestly pretty terrible, mostly coming out to them being extremely counterintuitive to what the game is supposed to be. Instead of being platforming stages that let you earn speed by doing well in the level, they instead slow things down to a snail's pace and overall just a chore to get through. The special stages, they're straight up bad too. Basically, they're just a bunch of problems with this game. I get that it's an important game and all, but Sonic 2 and 3 are on the same console. Therefore, I don't see much of a reason to play this game over the other two. But of course, it's a pretty enjoyable game in its own right. Don't let all my negative talk about it lead you to believe I hate this game. That would be absurd. It's still really enjoyable, even with all its flaws that I mentioned. The other levels are great, with Green Hill Zone and Starlight Zone being fantastic. The music in this game is amazing and sounds distinct from pretty much any game that was around at the time. Big props to, I'm gonna get this name terribly wrong, Masato Nakamura, for composing this soundtrack. Hell, whenever I hear a 4-3-2-1 chord progression, I automatically think of Sonic because of that, man. That's impressive. And of course, due to the super secret power of blast processing, Sonic came onto the scene rocking some heavy, intense graphics, man. I mean, as far as first games go, Sonic the Hedgehog is actually really good, but it's still my least favorite out of the classics. I hope you can understand. So on to the fourth best classic Sonic game, and y'all gonna think I'm crazy for this one, but it's Knuckles Chaotix. Yes, my boy Niggle's only game. It's the fourth best. Get at me. Not really. Anyway, Knuckles Chaotix is probably the most overlooked and overhated of the classics. The gimmick in this game, the whole magic tethering thing, is really intrusive to a lot of people. Honestly, it ended up feeling the game was handicapping you more than anything. On top of that, Knuckles Chaotix also released in 1995, which is the same year the Sega Saturn came out in America, and like a year after it was already out in Japan, I believe. This game is widely considered a spin-off and all, but unlike other Sonic spin-offs from this era, it introduced us to some mainstays of the Sonic franchise, such as SPO the Chameleon, Vector the Crocodile, Bomb the Bomb. So I wouldn't entirely write it off as a spin-off. Even then, that doesn't warrant how Sega treats this game. I'm pretty sure this is like the only Sonic game from the 90s that's never been really released or ported. I've heard that the game was planned to be in the Gems collection, but that port was scrapped apparently due to the difficulty of emulating 32X games. But it's not impossible. I mean, I'm playing on the Keka Fusion on my shitty computer after all. Despite the generally negative popular opinion the game seems to have nowadays, and the shunning from Sega, I really like this game a lot, man. I mean, it's got quite a few flaws though, I'll admit that. The physics are, well, just look at them. The level design is borderline atrocious at times, with levels that are way too vertical, have very few hazards and enemies, have no sense of direction, and are quite unmemorable to be honest. Then there are frame rate problems every time you take a hit because rings fly towards the screen. Basically, it's impossible to deny that the game has about as many blemishes as a boy in the middle of fucking puberty and shit. but I don't know if my bullshit tolerance level is like unusually high or something. I can personally look past all these issues and find good elements and end up forming a pretty enjoyable experience overall. While the gimmick may turn many off from the game, it's amazing when I come back to it. Sure, it's hard to get the hang of it, but it's satisfying to pull off shit they can never do in previous Sonic games once you do. Many find the fact that you need to learn this gimmick to get your full enjoyment out of the game off-putting, I'm sure. But it's nothing you can handle. I guess it's easy for me to say since my favorite genre is fighting games, so I'm used to having to get good, as they say. But it's possible, man. You too can get the hang of this system with practice. That's all it really takes. This gimmick in my eyes adds depth and a higher learning curve to this game, which I personally enjoy. I don't know, I'm a strange fuck, I guess. And then obviously this game looks pretty damn good, with a lot of colors and great sprite work. The character sprites being my favorite in any 2D Sonic game until Mania is revealed, in fact. And that soundtrack, my nigga. One of the best in the series, hands down, with some tracks such as like Midnight Greenhouse, Evening Star, and Walk In reaching like levels of waviness that are straight just impossible at the time. Most people seem to think that Door Into Summer is the best song in the soundtrack, and while this track is really great, my personal favorite might just be Seascape. Most importantly though, this game is fun. I mean, that's all I really need from the game at the end of the day. A game can be like flawed as a motherfucker, but if I find it fun, then I'll recommend it. And Knuckles Chaotix falls right into that category of imperfect but really, really fun. Here's hoping the Taxman and Head can remake this game with reworked physics and maybe seeing some altered level design. It's a reach, yeah, but hey, I have hope anyway. Alright, now for the third best. Like Knuckles Chaotix, it was another game that came out on Advon for the Genesis, and I'm of course talking about that Sonic CD, my boy. This one seems to be a very love it or hate it kind of game, I've noticed. Interestingly though, this is like the only one of these games where my thoughts on them drastically changed when I first played them as a middle school kid. Back then, I honestly couldn't stand this game. The level design and the point of the game confused me. I wasn't a fan of that American soundtrack for the most part, and Wacky Workbench, you see this? This is not level design. It's some shit. But after playing the Taxman remake, I actually really enjoyed this game. I really wasn't expecting to. Sure, going after all the generators and holograms could still be a taxing experience due to the sheer vertical bitch nigginess of these levels, but it's at least made it easier in the remake. Whitehead fixed some annoying collision detection issues that were present in the original that made time travel frustratingly difficult to pull off. And he also added Tails, a character that's actually well equipped to explore vertical levels, like the ones present in this game. And praise motherfucking Ultra Lord, there's the option to change that weak ass American soundtrack to the game's intended music. Being a guy that's like into music heavy, this simple change makes the game much more enjoyable, like more than you would think. What can I say? I'm an easy guy to please. That's a good thing for all the ladies in the audience too, you know, all negative one of you. Now I do acknowledge that music is subjective, and some may really like CD's American soundtrack. Truthfully, I don't necessarily really think it's bad or anything, but it doesn't really feel fitting for a Sonic game, and honestly feels kinda generic. And to this day, Sonic, you may call him many things, but generic, I don't think you can call him that. Playing the remake though, I came to the conclusion that Sonic CD is a great time. Actually, let me correct that. Sonic CD is a great time when you play it like a normal Sonic game. I'll admit that can be kinda hard when the game feels like it's actively trying to shove you outside your comfort zone to explore the worlds in front of you. Despite the weird level design that people who dislike the game rant about to no end, Sonic CD still plays like a Sonic game through and through and has some pretty cool zones to boot. Tell Tempest is basically just Labyrinth Zone, but done not terribly. Quartz Quadrant and Stardust Speedway are really fun. And Palm Tree Panic, bro, it's honestly one of my favorite opening levels of Sonic history, next to City Escape of course, because I mean, can you really beat City Escape? Come on, man. The only zone where the level design is like really as big of a deal as people make it out to be is Wacky Workbench. I think the footage can speak for itself on this one. I don't want to talk about it anymore. My blood's already boiling mentioning that bullshit. No matter the level, when you start trying to go for the generators and the holograms without a guide like I tried to, the game becomes a lot less fun. Tails alleviates that problem a bit, but still, I would recommend that you either ignore the generators and holograms, just go for the time stones, so I can still be a pain because of those damn special stages, or just play the game with the guide. It makes finding those shits way easier and way less stressful. Even then, I just say you're better off just playing the game normally if you don't care about getting the bad ending. When you do that, this game is a pretty lit experience, and yeah, it's definitely third best. Now, final two games I haven't talked about, they're no secret by now, is Sonic 2 versus Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The two Sonic games are pretty much everyone and their mother loves. It's impossible to dislike these as far as I care. I personally love both of these games, so which one's better? I'm not telling you right now, of course. I mean, what kind of self-respecting YouTuber would I be if I didn't milk you for all the retention time I can get, huh? Anyway, instead, I'll compare the gameplay a bit, reveal the victor, and then break down why I find said victor to be a better game. Sound good? No? Great. Despite both these being great games in their own right, being from the same franchise, both are pretty different, mostly in terms of gameplay. Well, not to the extent of something like Sonic Rush. Sonic 2 is probably the classic game that emphasizes speed the most. This is most evident in zones like Emerald Hill, which in comparison Green Hill has less platforming and more speed. Aquatic Ruin, which is the water level where you don't have to touch the water at all. And of course Chemical Plant, which introduced speed boosters. This was a drastic change from the first game. I was just like, oh, you like that first level? You want to go fast? Too bad. Sound these fun platforms, nigga. Fuck you. Instead, this game just cranks the speed up, at times very considerably, which is cool. On the other hand, we got Sonic 3 and Niggles, which feels more like a natural evolution in the first game, with levels that do have speed, but there's also more of an emphasis on exploration, finding new paths, and some platforming as well. In general, with this game, I feel like exploration is much more rewarding. The alternate routes can low-key feel like a completely new level, and I feel like I'm rewarded with monitors and special stage rings more often for exploring. Honestly, which game you like probably boils down to which gameplay style you like more. And which one do I prefer, you ask? Well, I gotta give the number one spot to Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1. 11 out of 10. It's perfect. It's perfect. No, I'm just kidding. It's Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It's Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Personally, I find the gameplay in Sonic 3 and Knuckles to be the best in the classic series. While Sonic 2 is my pick for the best game to speedrun, I played 3K more, for a good reason. Gameplay aside, there are definitely other aspects where I feel 3 and Niggles just kick Sonic 2's ass. No offense. For one, they're the zones. Threekles has Sonic 2 slightly beat in the mountain zones, with 13 as opposed to Sonic 2's 9 or so. To clarify, I don't count Hidden Palace in 3, and I consider Sky Chase and Wing Fortress one zone, close enough, they're both in the sky, fuck it. I'd honestly say the zones in 3 and Knuckles are just better, overall. From Sonic 2, I like Emerald Hill, Aquatic Ruin, and Casino Night. I love Chemical Plant and Mystic Cave, but the rest of them, there's nothing I really find wrong with Hilltop, but it's just not memorable to me in the slightest. Like, whenever I get to this point of the game, I'm always just thinking about how I'm closer to Mystic Cave instead of this level itself. And the later half of this game really just falls off considerably, starting with Oil Ocean. This stage, it's not really that fun, honestly. Probably the worst one in the game. It's another one of those stages that kind of tries to slow things down a bit. Not nearly to the degree of Marble Zone, mind you. That stage is like a fucking brick wall. But still, it's kind of annoying to play through. Sure, it's very easy to cheese by basically swimming through the oil in Act 1 and doing that one glitch in Act 2 that skips basically the bulk of the stage. However, that's not a good thing to me and just makes the zone even worse. Now, I will admit, Oil Ocean has some sick ass music, I can't deny that one. But Metropolis... fuck the bandits in the stage. Their placement can be hard to deal with, and their attacks are just kind of hard to get around in general. Not really so much the starfish type thing, more the other two. This has caused this level to be linked with frustration to me, and I kind of dread getting to this every time I play this game. Sky Chase and Wing Fortress, they're pretty cool to see the first time you play the game, but for me they get old after like more than one playthrough of this game. So on paper, that's a good 9 out of 18 levels I don't really like playing through that much. But I'm gonna lower that to 6, because I don't really mind Hilltop, and Sky Chase, it was alright. But as I showed probably in Knuckles Chaotix entry this list, level design isn't determined enough to like the game. So just know that I don't hate Sonic 2 because these levels I don't like, despite me not being too much of a fan of them. Now compare that to Sonic 3 and Nibbles. The quality of the zones kind of skyrockets with Sonic 2 in a crazy way. I mean, I like Marble Garden, Carnival Night, Lava Reef, the Death Egg, and Doomsday. Then I love Angel Island, Hydro City, Ice Cap, Mushroom Hill, Flying Battery, and Sky Sanctuary. If you didn't count, that's like 12 out of like 13, 14 of the game's zones that I really like. There are still others I'm not a fan of though. Launch Base was just flawed. Not terrible, but though it is always annoying falling and having to get back to where you were, which happens quite a bit if you aren't careful. And I'm not a careful motherfucker. Then you have Sandopolis. Specifically Sandopolis Act 2. which can eat my whole ass, my nigga. But that's it. I already like most of these zones, so it's clear that 3 and Knuckles takes the cake in this category. On top of just gameplay and stage selection being better, there are other things that make me think that 3 and Knuckles is a superior game too. While I'm not really mad at Sonic 2 for being inferior in this category, I really just have to acknowledge how much better the presentation is in 3 and Knuckles. I mean, the zones and sprites look cleaner than ever before without question, and the game wants you to know that immediately. Why also they have the first level set on fire and not be a glorified reskin of Green Hill. This is also the first game of the franchise that had cutscenes outside of the endgame, making the story feel more present and important as well. 3 and Knuckles also kicks ass musically as well. Of course Sonic 2 has a good soundtrack, but compared to the third game and the first one, I'd say, it can't even hold a candle. The only tracks that I thought stuck out as memorable are Chemical Plant, Oil Ocean, and Sky Chase. Meanwhile, there are plenty of songs of 3, such as the ones for Hydro City, Flying Battery, Ice Cap, Mushroom Hill, Sky Sanctuary, and the special stages that I really absolutely adore. A couple which I would say are in my favorite video game tracks of all time. I mean, have you heard Hydro City, bruh? Those beats are fat. Look, even the save file select music is great. A really cool thing that this game does is changing music between acts. These second act music changes often add elements onto the existing melodies that are already there, and sometimes entirely new ones are added, which is really cool. Like, you heard Hydro City Zone and all, but get a load of this! Oh, that was a terrible impression, I'm sorry. Honestly, I could talk about the music in this game for an entire video, and I probably will in the future, but it's quality stuff, which is to be expected when Michael Jackson worked on a good portion of these songs. Then there are the special stages. Sonic 2's half pipes were decent, sure, but the Blue Sphere stages? Definitely the best in the classic games, only rivaled by Knuckles Chaotix, I'd say. The level design in 3 Knuckles is leagues better than anything seen in the past classic games, for the most part. Fuck you, Sandopolis. The addition of the elemental shields adds more variety in the game in general. There are 3 different characters, Knuckles even having his own kind of different story and levels. Look. Basically, 3 Knuckles is just oozing with quality. So much so that I personally feel it's one of the best 2D platformers ever. Probably somewhere in my top 5. Believe it or not, I actually wanted to put Sonic 2 as number 1, but I really just can't. That game really just can't compare it to what many would consider the best Sonic game ever, and still the 2D classic game to beat. Will Mania top this game's quality when it comes out now, if it's not out already by the time you're watching this? Well, only time will tell, but it's looking very possible. Rest assured, I'll let you guys know my answer to the question when I reach that conclusion. But in the meantime, I'ma go cry until August 29th, my nigga. Thanks for rocking with me.
So the PC version is going to be coming out, we just found out, on August 29th.